Hello everyone and welcome back. So today, I'm hosting two incredible narrators, Mortis Media and Beside the Dying Fire. Also, stick around till the end of this video, because we have a great announcement to make that will make you very happy. So grab your flashlight and follow us into the darkness.
At the time of this story, I was a few months into an undergraduate degree in Austin, Texas, and had just become comfortable enough with myself to come out of the closet. At the time, there were no dating apps available, so to find dates, I used Craigslist, something which I would later learn would be a big mistake. I started chatting with a guy off Craigslist, Craig, and we hit it off and decided to set a time and place to meet in person. His advert said he was 27 and I was 18 at the time. At first, he was very insistent on meeting at his place, which I later found out was just a trailer. And it kind of made me suspicious, but in his pictures, he was very good looking and had a nice smile, so I decided to just let it go. Eventually we agreed to get coffee before going to his place. So the day I arrived, and I went to get coffee and was pretty excited. I had showed my roommate pictures of Craig and talked about how I was looking forward to meeting him. I showed up to the coffee shop and he was already there. He actually did look like his pictures, so that was a good start. We got coffee and ended up chatting for several hours before he asked whether I wanted to go back to his place. Luckily, my roommate called to check up on me, and it also happened that he was stranded because his car had broken down. So I told Craig that I would take my friend back home before heading over to his place. Well, by the time I picked my friend up, Craig was no longer answering his phone and/or texts. When he finally answered, he accused me of making up some excuse so I wouldn't have to go back to his place with him, and basically was very angry and annoyed despite our great conversation earlier. I was a bit bummed, but basically didn't think of him again until years later, when my old roommate sent me a link for a news article about Craig. Apparently, he had been running a sex trafficking ring, using underage boys that he would lure through his good looks and promises. I can only imagine what would have happened to me if I'd have gone back to his trailer with him that day. Reading that article gave me serious chills.
So, hey guys. I've been lurking on this sub for like 2 years, and thanks to the wonders of online dating, I finally have quite the story to share with you. I use Tinder pretty frequently, and it's usually cool. Just meeting people, chilling, smoking with most of them. So I matched with this dude named Charlie, and he seems cool. He's really cute and he plays music, which is really appealing to me as I like to sing and play piano. We talked for a little while and I agreed to meet him at his house. Mistake number 1. Why did I think it was a good idea to meet a stranger in their home? I don't drive, so I take an Uber over, and it's a decent way away, so it's kinda pricey. When he buzzes me into the apartment complex, I got this really creepy vibe, but I shook it off his nerves. I go up to the 3rd floor and he's standing at the door. Things are cool, we're just chilling, we smoked a couple of bowls and we were watching a movie. So he makes a move on me and I go with it. We end up on the bed and we're obviously engaging in adult activities when, out of nowhere, he wraps his hands around my neck hard. Now, that's all fine and good with me. I mean, I can dig that in the right setting, but alone in a stranger's house when he didn't even check to see if it was cool is not one of those settings. So I literally can't breathe, and I'm fairly certain I'm turning blue at this point, and he is just relentless. Not only is he asphyxiating me, he's now yelling in my face, "Are you scared?" with this wild look in his eyes, and I'm like, fuck yes, I'm scared. Are you trying to kill me right now? I started to struggle and he was gripping even harder. I'm not even kidding you guys, I seriously thought I was going to die. By some miracle, I wriggle out of his grasp and start screaming. He's yelling at me to calm down. I'm frantically trying to put on my clothes. He grabs my wrist as I'm trying to leave, and I use all of my strength to pull away and slam the door. As it was closing, the charming fella bid me adieu with the words, "Fucking cunt." I get home and I look in the mirror and I have hella bruises on my neck. I try to cover it up with makeup to no avail. I straight up look like I was almost strangled to death. Then he texts me saying, "I think you need more than one dick." And I'm like, oh really? You want to bring a friend and kill me together? How lovely. Anyways, I blocked him and reported him on Tinder. I wish I could have done more, because I seriously think he would have killed me. I've been debating going to the police, but the bruises are gone and it's a he said she said thing. But I'm really starting to wonder if I should. Because the next girl might not be so lucky. 0 out of 10 would not attempted murder again. Crazy strangler Tinder dude, let's not meet.
This is a tale about a friend I used to have years ago. Her name was Sarah, and I met her in the 7th grade. Back then, she was a normal preteen girl, much like myself. We were best of friends for 7th and 8th grade. We lost touch after our 8th grade graduation because we went to separate high schools, public for her, private school for me. It wasn't until I moved back into my mother's house at the age of 19, pregnant and depressed from my failed relationship with both my father and ex, that I started talking to her again. We picked back up when we left off at the end of 8th grade and quickly rebuilt our relationship back to best friend status. She even agreed to be my son's godmother. Now, I want to take a moment and tell you a bit about Sarah and myself. We were the same age, our birthdays roughly 2 weeks apart from each other. She was the oldest of 3 girls. We both appeared to look similar almost. Both fairly pale in skin, glasses, and same height. She was a few inches taller than me, but nothing to really brag about, and same weight. Her hair color was more blonde compared to my brunettes, and had blue eyes, while I had brown eyes. Back to the story. This takes place a few months after I had given birth. Nothing major had happened between me and her yet, except she was a little bossy, but I brushed that off as being the eldest sibling. Nothing I couldn't handle. The only thing that I found weird was that she freaked out if I didn't answer her text messages back right away. Even if I was at work and couldn't without fear of losing my job. But I tried brushing it off as her worrying about me. I had started dating a new guy named Josh. Sarah was actually the one that introduced us to, because Josh was a good friend with her boyfriend Rob. Naturally, I started spending a little more time with Josh, but still spent a lot of time with Sarah. She didn't take to this very well, and tried causing problems for me and Josh. After having a sit down with Sarah, telling her I wasn't giving up our relationship, but neither was I going to push a guy I really liked away, she seemed to have gotten the message and backed off. Shit hit the fan shortly after Josh and I moved into an apartment together. Sarah demanded to spend more time with me while Josh was at work. I really had no problem with it, but her bossiness started to reach unbearable levels. She didn't ask to stay for dinner, simply said she was staying. Asking her to leave for the night fell upon deaf ears and many times crashed on our sofa, causing any possible sexy times with Josh to fade. It got to the point she started tagging along on our dates, so we simply started not going out. I tried talking to her, but she kept saying if I was a real friend, I wouldn't mind her being there all the time. Well, we managed to get one free weekend without Sarah. She had gone to some water park with her family, so Josh and I got to spend some much needed alone time together. However, because of the strain Sarah caused us, we had a hard time enjoying each other. I refused to end my relationship with him, and we tried hard to work it out. We tried talking to her boyfriend Rob, asking if he could help us. He said they were planning on getting an apartment together at the beginning of the following month. She was still living with her parents at this point, but told us it was looking like it was going to be in the same complex as us. I could deal with that. Figured she would want to spend time in her new place, decorating it and hosting dinners for her friends and families. Also note, I had gotten my hair done earlier in the week. I got an awesome new haircut that looked great and loved it a lot. I got many compliments on it from various friends. When Sarah came back from her mini vacation, she had dyed her hair to the same color as mine and gotten it cut the exact same way. I didn't really mind too much. It was a pretty sweet haircut, but both Josh and I couldn't get over how weird it was. We were looking like twins. She even got colored contacts to wear under her glasses that changed her eyes to the color of brown, like me. One night later that week, I was hanging out with another mutual friend of ours without Sarah. Her name was Heather. Heather and I had gotten around to talking about Sarah when Heather said casually, "You know she's jealous of your life, right? She's even got a huge crush on Josh and you." I really had no idea. She didn't say anything about it to me, and I had no idea she harbored feelings like that for me. She'd had many different boyfriends over the years. After that, I started to notice a shift in Sarah. She wanted to spend even more time alone with me, and oddly enough, more alone time with just Josh. On one of these nights, she tried to kiss me. Now, I have no problem with someone being gay. I have many other friends who are, but I am not, and everyone knows it. I like guys way too much. I told her this, and she went crazy. Told me I was a lying cunt, that it was leading her on, and that I had to kiss her back because she said so. I told her no. I didn't. She left shortly after to meet up with Rob and Josh while I took care of my son. I didn't really think anything of it until Rob came over, saying Sarah kicked him out of the house because she wanted to talk to Josh alone. I filled Rob in on what had happened, what Heather said, and my feelings. He sensed something weird was going on. I got Heather to come over to watch my son, while Rob and I went back to their apartment to confront her. We found her in bed with Josh. Naturally, both Rob and I were upset. Rob and I just left and he crashed on my sofa for the night, though I don't think either of us really did much sleeping. The next day, I broke up with Josh and Rob broke up with Sarah. Rob ended up moving back in with his father, and just cut ties with Sarah and Josh completely. Sarah blamed me for the ending of her relationship with Rob and vowed to make my life a living hell. She kept her apartment in the same complex as mine and tried very hard to get me in trouble with our landlord. At random times, the landlord would stop by saying I had a noise complaint against me or said that someone complained about some awful smell coming from my place. After the third time he came by saying someone saw a rat coming out of my door, did he realize someone was just trying to cause me trouble. I told him, but he has a job to do, I guess. When Sarah learned that wasn't working, she started calling my home phone and cell phone at random times. Never said anything, and all the calls were restricted, but I knew it was her. From my window I could see into her apartment and always saw her looking out of my window while on the phone. On the phone the exact times my phones were ringing. I quickly changed my phone numbers, and that was the end of that day. No one besides my mom and work had them, and neither cared for Sarah much after learning what she had done. When she realized she couldn't get a hold of me through the phone, she took to blowing up my email and MySpace, Facebook. Obviously, it didn't take me long to block her on that. However, this takes the cake. Apparently she had a copy of my key. I don't know how she got it. I never gave her a copy. I figured Josh might have given her one when they started to be sexually active, or else she just stole it from Josh and make her own copy. She took to entering my house when I wasn't home. At first I started noticing little things disappearing or being moved. My bills were no longer on the kitchen counter, but on the dining table. My favorite shirt had gone missing. Cordless phone across the room from where I last remember setting it down. I thought I was simply losing it and misplacing things. I am a bit scarred brain, but not that much. This went on for 2 or 3 weeks until bigger things were missing. My son's DVD player, my keyboard, cell phone charger, bath soap, towels, and even my son's baby blanket were all taken. Naturally, I did the most logical thing and called the police and landlord. Landlord changed out my locks ASAP, and the cops agreed to talk to Sarah. They said they wouldn't be able to do anything unless they let them in and or admitted it, but they would still try to talk to her. And this is what I was told. They knocked on the door. She opened it wide enough for them to see the wall behind her. On this wall was hundreds of photos of me, either alone at work or at the store or with my son at the park. It wouldn't have been so creepy if it weren't for the fact that she wrote in big letters with red paint, "Die, my name, you fucking cunt." It covered some of the photos and the wall. The police were able to search her place. They found journals full of her writing saying how she wanted to kill me, how she was going to do it, and other fucked up things. She had my work schedule written on her calendar. Not that it was hard to guess it. It was the same every week. And on a certain day, she had it circled and marked as Kill Day. Police found an unregistered gun and a huge knife. She was arrested. I promptly moved out and backed into my mother's house. I found a new job and changed my appearance. I cut off contact with all our mutual friends, not that we had many, and found a new job. I haven't seen or heard from her in 3 years now. For all I know, she is still in jail. I just count my lucky stars.
I met a guy online. and we hit it off on our first date. A couple of weeks later, we had gone on 4 dates, and he knew where I lived. That's when it started getting weird. He wouldn't return my phone calls, so after a week, I stopped trying. Not long after, I glanced out the window of my house and saw him parked a couple of houses down with another person in the car. I waited to see what he would do, and he drove off an hour later. A couple of days later, he was back, except he was parked in a different location. I started to get freaked out. There was also a second person in the car, and they left 2 hours later. The third time I saw his car outside, I was poised to call the cops. I didn't get a chance because there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find a very pregnant girl on my front steps. She began to rant. How could I date a guy with a girlfriend? Did I not have any morals? Who did I think I was trying to steal her man? I let this go on for a while before I interrupted her and told her I had no idea and asked why she was mad at me, since I wasn't the one cheating on her. I found out that she forced him to drive to my house and sit outside 9 times. 9. She wanted to see what I looked like and have him confront me and break it off, but he wouldn't go up to my door.
The following account occurred roughly 3 years ago, during the summer of 2012. It has always been difficult for me to talk about, but I have found writing about it to be therapeutic. I was 17 at the time, and I had just gotten my first job. I lived in Western Virginia, in a small mountain community. My mom's friend owned a camping resort not far from our house that had a general store, and she said she'd pay me to help out in the store during the busy months in the summer. It was a pretty easy job, and I met a lot of out-of-towners, which was nice because our community could get so isolated. Most of us lived pretty far away from each other. One day, a big burly mountain man type came into the store. He was in his late 40s, early 50s, probably 6 feet tall. He looked dirty, like he worked outside a lot. His clothes were short of tattered, and he had a long beard. We had a few of the woodsy hermit types in the area, and he definitely looked like one of them. He bought some basic items, one of which was one of the homemade bars of soap. When he came to the register, he looked me up and down carefully. He didn't talk for a minute, just stared. His people skills clearly needed work. "Did you make this soap?" he asked. "Possibly," I said. "I help out with that sometimes." "You make a lot of your own stuff?" "Toiletries and things like that, yeah." "I like that," he said, nodding to himself. I honestly did not know how to respond. I quickly rang up his items, and he paid with crumbled money. Right before he left, he asked, "You cook too?" "Sometimes," I replied. "Bet the boys round here are itching to marry you," he said as he smiled to himself. I said nothing. I was puzzled as to what I said that stood out as wife material. I told Krista, Mom's friend boss, about the bizarre encounter, and she laughed it off. So did my family and friends. But then, Mountain Man started turning up more often. We chatted a little bit here and there, and I found out he had a cabin in the woods he claimed he built with his bare hands. He said he hunted and lived off the land, other than the things he bought at the store. Over time, our chatter escalated, with him making comments about how nice it would be to have a woman like me around who could make those things and cook his kills. One time, he even said I had the birthing hips that men lust after. He even started inviting me to fish with him, hunt with him, see his place. And I always politely declined. The intensity with which he said those things really scared me. Thanks to her, I started speaking to him less, and I thought I wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. But one night, I was closing up, and it was late, around 10 at night. Krista had left about an hour before, and I was leaving by myself. The only two cars in front of the store were an old blue pickup and mine. I was immediately alarmed because I knew Mountain Man drove a blue pickup, but I didn't see him in the lot, just his car. So I walked quickly to my car and checked the back seat before I started her up. But then, when I first turned the key into the ignition, I got nothing but sputters. I tried several more times and got scared quickly. Of all nights, why is this happening tonight? I remember asking myself angrily. Just as I was reaching for my phone to call for help, there was a loud pounding on the driver's side window. I am shocked that I didn't piss myself. I didn't even want to look, because I knew it was him. But I did, and my suspicions were confirmed. He smiled a big grin at me, showing me exactly which teeth were missing. "Need some help?" he said loudly through the window. I shook my head furiously. "My dad is on his way," I said, hoping to scare him off. I hadn't spoken to my dad in years. Mountain Man laughed. "No, he's not," he said. "Open the door." The hairs on my neck stood up straight. How did he know I was bluffing? "No," I said firmly. "Leave me alone." Suddenly he looked angry. He pulled the handle, but I had locked all the doors when I first got in. He kept furiously pulling the handle and started pounding on the window. "Leave now, or I'm calling the cops," I screamed at him. He clearly wasn't getting the message, so I pulled out my phone and called 911. I must have sounded hysterical to the dispatcher, and I knew she could hear him pounding. She said she would have officers out ASAP, but out here, that could be a while. "The cops are on their way. Leave now," I screamed at Mountain Man, who didn't seem to let it deter him. But after a few more minutes of pounding, he suddenly stopped and walked back to his truck. I watched him go, hopeful he would leave me alone. But then, he started walking back toward me with a fucking crowbar in hand. "No!" I screamed at him. "Get the fuck away from me!" He started swinging at the driver's side window with the crowbar. I ducked down into the passenger seat on the floor and covered the head of my neck like they teach you in tornado drills. I heard the sickening crack of the window, but not for long. Suddenly, I heard male voices shouting, telling Mountain Man to get away from the car. I sat up and saw two men approaching, one with a shotgun pointed at Mountain Man. I recognized them as a couple of guests staying at the resort for a camping trip. I breathed a sigh of relief and got out of the car, telling them that the police were on their way. I thanked him, and we waited for the police. and surprisingly, Mountain Man didn't make any moves to get away. But the cops came pretty quickly after that, so he didn't have much of a chance. They took him away, and I gave them my statement. I was pretty shaken up for a while afterwards. A few weeks later, I finally got the scoop on the man. Apparently, he had a history of mental illness. He had been in and out of state institutions. He really had been living in an old cabin in the woods, where he wasn't taking his meds and his issues were only getting worse. My cousin Luke is a cop, and later on he told me some more about the case that he had heard about through some other officers. The police did a search of the cabin after the incident to see if there was anything that might be of interest to them. They found a journal that Mountain Man kept. Apparently, in it he said he was lonely and wanted a wife. He mentioned me by my name a lot, and Luke said there were a lot of lewd things in there about me that he didn't want to share, but tried to put it simply by saying that Mountain Man had a detailed plan to abduct me. When Luke said that, I nearly burst into tears, thinking about how horribly that night could have gone if those two men hadn't come along. Thankfully, he has been put back into a state institution. With any luck, he'll stay there for good. Mountain Man, let's not meet again. Hey everyone, and thank you so much for listening today. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Beside the Dying Fire and Mortis Media for joining me today in this video. You can find links to their channels in the description, so please check out these amazing narrators. Don't forget that Mortis Media and myself are currently hosting a competition to win 2 exclusive signed prints of the artwork you saw drawn on the screen and in the thumbnail. All you need to do is to subscribe to me and Mortis Media and leave a comment on this video and the one on Mortis Media's channel, which you can find on screen now. The competition will end in 1 week and the winner will be announced on both our channels. So stay tuned and I will see you all in my next video.